So, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. Today I have with me Luke Dam. Luke is currently CEO of SafetyWise, running incident investigations and ICAM training, so that's incident cause analysis method, to ensure quality, standard and governance across the industry, which is obviously super important. Luke also has over 16 years experience in the State Emergency Service, the SES, in various roles there. So I'm really excited to speak to you today, Luke, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I wanted to dive straight into the SES aspect of things because...
Right into the thick of it.
Straight into the thick of it. And these conversations are all about like leadership and communication and different kinds of leadership and communication that might show up, or different perspectives and everything. And I feel like the SES has a lot to speak to around those areas, especially in states of emergency where communication and leadership is really key. So the first question, we sort of touched on it just before we started recording, was around the difference in leadership with the SES and leadership required being on the job in the moment versus the everyday at the unit kind of.
Yeah, for sure. I think just quickly, I'll just jump back just a little bit. Here in Victoria, the SES have what's called a first responder role. So we would go to car accidents, use the jaws of life, stuff like that. Now, in other states, that's not always the case. So we did a lot of high pressure, high stress jobs, entrapments, industrial entrapments, that sort of stuff, car accidents, train crash, plane, all that sort of stuff. So it's very different to many SESs around Australia that don't get involved in that sort of stuff. So as I said, high stress, high pressure. There's no doubt, I would say, that leadership, in any volunteer organisation is very different to the workplace. And I sort of say lightheartedly, you can't do that because I'm going to dock your pay. No, can't dock your pay. You can't take leave next week. No, there's no leave. It's different. Volunteers do things for a different reason, whether it's a sense of community, a sense of wanting to help and be a part of something. There's very, very different motivations for different people. So when it comes to leadership, I find it, it's different. Like, you still need to engage and get buy-in and that sort of stuff. But when it comes to things like discipline and other stuff like that, it's a little bit more challenging. And also bearing in mind that role out in the field, you're in the middle of a car accident with two people trapped in a car, is not the time to have a group huddle and let's sing Kumbaya and talk about how we're going to do this. It's very regimented. Do this, do this, do this, do this. There's set processes and set procedures. And as an OIC, an officer in command of an incident, you're it. So you've got to make those rapid fire decisions, really quickly, with minimal input, with minimal information and guidance. You've just got to look at a scene and go, right, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and direct people to do it. Get back outside of an operation, go back to the unit, and that to me is where you really make or break it. If you can get people following you outside of an operation, they'll follow you because they trust you and believe in you out in the field. And if you do start snapping at someone because of pressure and stress and stuff like that, nothing makes you move quicker than a paramedic saying, hurry up, they're dying, get them out of the car now. That sort of jars you a bit. So if you can get the buy-in there, you'll get the buy-in in the operations, because they'll trust and believe you and so on. And they'll understand the experience and how you engage and what you're doing. But I think when you're engaging back at the unit is very similar to workplace. You can do the dictator thing if that's how you really think that's going to work, but I think we all know that doesn't. You need the buy-in, you need the engagement, you need the input. So it's very similar to workplace in that environment, not operational.
Which one do you feel like comes first in terms of building that relationship and that,
all the trust and the buy-in and so forth. You've got to. Yeah.
So would that come first in the moment or in the operations?
Look, I think, that's an interesting one. Look, I know. So when I first joined the SES many years ago, I was in a Melbourne metropolitan unit that was the biggest and busiest in the States. I had many years of experiences. This was a unit that would do 1,100 calls a year. Now that's monstrous for a volunteer unit when you equate that out over a 365-day year. And across that, there would be 300 plus car accidents they would be attending. It was just monstrous. I then took about a 7-year break, and then I moved to a regional area and joined a country unit, thinking this will be good. Country lifestyle, won't be as busy, and we were doing 300 plus calls a year, which is still big for a little country unit, which only had at that stage probably about 10 members when I first joined. It was very easy when I got there to establish that I knew what I was talking about, from an operational perspective. But of course, I didn't have the trust of everyone. Who's this new guy, and who's this guy telling us, this is how we should be doing things, or suggesting that's how we should be doing things. And and that was very different. So you had to get that trust. You had to. Without it, people weren't going to listen. People weren't going to engage. They might go, oh yeah, okay, that's interesting. Whatever, move on. Yeah. And I think that's no different. When I came into this CEO role 4.5 years ago, I didn't know anyone in the business. I was actually headhunted into the role for a specific reason. And so I came into an industry. Yes, I've got a safety background. I've got a learning development background. But I'm not an accident investigator, and I was brought in as a business manager. And so I had to get that trust very quickly to be able to do the role effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that there are certain kinds of ways to communicate in these scenarios, whether in an emergency scenario or in where you need that element of trust even more so? There's ways to communicate that helps to build that, or have you found that for you?
Oh, for sure. Big stick works beautifully. No, yeah, there is. I mean, as I said, you can sort of come in, the bull in the china shop thing, if that's how you really want to do things. But yeah, again, we know that doesn't work. I think back to previous experience. I worked for a big multinational organisation many years ago that was bought out by a bigger organisation. And I don't remember what they called the program, but they basically had this program where they would spend 3 months when they acquire a business and just look and observe and watch. And then they would do 3 months of implementation and 3 months of reviewing. So they didn't just come in, headstrong and change everything. And I actually like that. I think that works. You take that time, get the feel of the place, get to know people, sort of understand what's going on, and then start to make change and introduce change as required.
Yeah.
I've seen lots of new managers come into a role and suddenly they've got this authority and, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Just settle down a minute.
Yeah, I feel like that's an important part of even change management, is to understand why things are happening the way they are right now, even if you don't agree with them, even if you already know, whatever it is, but to understand what led to those processes being put in place, so that way you can understand the business even more, or the structure even more, to then actually develop and build upon it rather than bulldoze it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, coming into safety wise was an eye opener. It was always being promoted amongst the business. Look, it's a small family business. No, it's not. It's 22 people globally and got a revenue to multi-million dollars. It's not a small family business. It is a multinational business. It may not be on the scale of a Wesfarmers or a major corporation like that, but we've got to get out of this mindset. Oh, it's a small family business. We need to start thinking like a multinational business, and that's what we are. We need to start treating it that way. It doesn't mean you can't have the traits of a small family business, that sense of family, that teamwork, things like that. But we've got to get out of that mindset and think big.
Yeah, I think there's a balance there, definitely, because if that's part of their values and their qualities of being like a small family business where you can connect properly, then that's beautiful. But you're right, at the same time, we play small when we don't let us, and they're sort of not underserving, but holding back from their potential of what they could be serving by staying in that realm of, well, we're a small family business, but when you're really multinational, then you can do more and be of more service anyway.
I think of that, again, I don't quite know how to word it, but, if that's what you think, then that's what you are.
Yes.
Yeah. if you're going to keep calling yourself a small family business, well, guess what? You're going to keep thinking like a small family business. Let's start looking big picture. Let's start looking at what we could be doing and what we could be achieving. And in 4.5 years, we've done that. We've expanded globally. We had a team in North America, and we have a licensee in South America. We've got a team around Australia. We've grown the team around Australia. We've appointed someone in Europe. We've appointed another person into North America. We're now in early stage discussions now for Singapore and India. We're starting to look at that bigger picture and that bigger scale of where we could be and what we could be doing, and obviously how we're going to do that. I think if we kept that small family business mentality, I don't think we could have or would have done that, because that would have held us back.
Yeah.
And I think you're right about values, and you can still have that team and family value and sense, around the workplace and so forth. Absolutely, you can. But I think big picture, you've got to start looking outside of that as well.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
I just get scared when people say that.
If you think back to 18-year-old Luke, and
Wow.
not too much at 18-year-old Luke, like, let's be kind to him, but if you think back to 18-year-old Luke and where you are now, what would you say you've learnt the biggest things around leadership or communication for you personally between then and now?
Yeah, that's a hard one. It took me. Look, when I first got into my first safety role, I was that classic safety cop. What are you doing? You can't do this. You can't do that. What are you doing? You stop. You can't do that. And you still see it now, and I've coached so many people on that sort of attitude. Now, I've written articles, I've done social media videos myself about that. It doesn't work. There is a time and a place for that type of action. There is an absolute imminent serious incident about to happen. Stop. Let's fix it.
About to put a fork in a PowerPoint.
Bingo. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah, absolutely. But seriously, you're going to get more buy-in and more trust as a safety educator than a safety cop. Let's take people along for the ride and the journey. Let's explain it and make them understand. This is why we do what we do. This is why you can't do that, and the reasons behind it. And I think that's important. I talk to a lot of organisations now. One of my areas I've had a passion for many years is confined space safety. Incredibly dangerous situations that people are going in. And I've done a lot of training over the years, and you talk to people, why do you do that? Because that's what we're taught. Yeah, but why? That's what we're taught. Do you understand why you can't do that? No, we're just taught don't do it. And I struggle with that. We have to educate people to make informed decisions. Again, I go back to what I said. This is why we do it or don't do it. This is the ramifications, and educate people and make them understand that there's choices, absolutely. But, if you do that one, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And that then helps reduce, I would say that would reduce the likelihood of incidents happening, because people can make those informed decisions in the moment.
Absolutely.
Rather than saying, oh, this wasn't in the guidebook, how do I make this decision? But I think you also just define the difference between leadership and dictatorship, which is a huge difference.
Absolutely. So, I guess to go back to your 18-year-old question, it's about conversations, it's about education. It's not about being the safety cop and, look at my new uniform, my new badge, and it doesn't work. And yet we still see it. Here we are in 2020. We still come across loads of that attitude, not just in safety, but in business in general.
Yeah.
I'm the CEO. I'm the boss.
And that doesn't build respect in the way that that is needed. And it, if anything, it speaks to people's, issues with authority, so it's sort of it pokes that, which then doesn't help the whole situation at all.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, think of the classic micromanager. Who engages with the micromanager? There goes the eyes just there. Who engages with the micromanager?
Yeah.
The only engagement I do is a punch in the mouth. I shouldn't say that, but seriously, just let me do my job. You've employed me to do this job. Trust me. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you, without speaking too much about it or too close to it, Have you experienced micromanagement in either industry or either field that you've been in with the SES?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, look, many years ago, I had my own safety consulting and training business, and a business partner, I decided to wind that up and go back into the workforce. And look, it was a great experience. We learned so much, going from an employee to self-employed and then going back into the workplace. It was a fascinating challenge. And the first role I went into, look, I lasted a bit over a year, but I had a micromanager there. But I was probably also hypersensitive that I'd gone from this role where I had full autonomy because it was my business to basically no autonomy.
Yeah.
But that was that manager in particular was quite challenging. I could have a meeting with her. I'd go and put things in place, go action stuff we spoke about. I'd go back to 2 or 3 days later. Oh, look, I've done this and this. Why'd you do that? I didn't want that. That's what we spoke about. No, do this, this, and this. Lots of change. And then when you start to do things, then she's over your shoulder. What's this? How can we do this? How can we stop? Again, you've employed me because of this experience. Let me do this. Hard work.
It is. Yeah.
Look, I think interviews, job interviews, and I think a lot of people fail in this. Interviews is very much about you as a candidate interviewing the employer as well.
Yes.
And I don't think people do that. People don't speak up. People don't ask questions, don't challenge. I challenge interviewers all the time over the years. What are you doing? Why do you do this? What's your targets? What are your goals? So how are you going to do that? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, it is. It is. The whole point is it's just as much for the potential employee to learn about the organisation and the culture and everything as much as it is the other way around.
Absolutely.
What experiences or what responses did you have from doing that?
Generally pretty good. Generally pretty good feedback. There was sometimes you could sort of see the ripple and go, they didn't like that. So you tell me you like to be challenged, but when someone asks you a question, you sort of react to it. So yeah, look, you get a gauge pretty quick. There's definitely mixed reactions. I mean, let's face it, some people just don't like to be questioned or don't like to be challenged. And it's not about doing it in a rude way, but it's, as I said, it's about trying to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. And look, and again, if I go to my safety-wise role, we do it regularly, in our investigations. We really go in and challenge organisations, Johnny doesn't go to work with a plan to hurt himself or kill himself, but there's reasons why this has happened. What's the organisation done to contribute to that? Is there a cultural issue? Is there a conflicting goals situation? Is there time constraints? There's a whole raft of things sitting there. People don't like it.
No.
We're always being challenged regularly by businesses and big business. If you could just tweak that report, we want to lay the blame on the contractor. No, it doesn't work that way.
No. I think also when there's such an idea of what authority is, and then when people feel like they finally gained it, don't want to let it go. Like it's this whole no, it's my precious now. It's so don't you challenge it because I've worked so hard with this false idea, work towards this false idea, and when I feel like I finally got it, it's not actually everything that I thought it was because it's not true. It's not real.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Look, and I get phone calls regularly from people, requesting investigations. And one of the first things I have conversations about is having access to the people that we're going to need to investigate. You can talk to everyone except that one. We sacked them already. Hang on. So why are we investigating? Well, we need to understand why we sacked them. No, you've jumped the gun about 15 levels there. This is not about blame. This is not about the person. We need to understand why the person did what they did.
Yeah.
If you decide to do disciplinary action, that's your call. That's got nothing to do with us. We're trying to find out why John did ABC.
Yeah.
But they've already got it in their mind. No, they're gone. They're terminated.
So many interesting things in that.
Yeah.
It's just a lot. Where do you
try being on the receiving end of the phone calls and trying to have that conversation going, hang on.
Yeah. How do you respond when tensions get high in moments like that? What have you learnt to sort of tap into in your response or how you approach things?
It's a hard one. That's tough.
I'm not
quite sure how to answer that one. I think it's just a matter of just Like literally just take a breath for a minute, just digest what's being said, and then just try and probe that and try and understand it. But at the same time, do challenge them. Well, why have we done this already? What are you trying to achieve? And there has been occasions where I've just said to a client, there's no point us doing an investigation. It's just no point. You've already made your decision. You're already trying to direct us. You're already saying, oh, we want you to find fault with what they're doing. Well, what if it's not? What if there's actually not fault with what that person has done?
Yeah.
I'm sure, John may have breached the rules or something, but was there a reason behind why he breached the rules? Is there a micromanager looking over his shoulder? Is there a dictator, pushing him? Is he being told, get this job done today, it's going to cost us $4 million? And it happens all the time.
Yeah. I think you answered that great.
Thanks.
Yeah, but just in terms of, it's about like your experience and your process is also, like take a breath because things are getting tense or, or I'm getting like a rebuttal here where it doesn't make sense, but they're not really seeing the sense in that. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, I actually did a piece on social media in the last couple of weeks where I talked about, if you're familiar with that old TV commercial from the States that was going around many years ago about herding cats. It's where
I know what you're saying about herding cats, but
yeah, so there was a video. It was actually a TV commercial. I think from memory, it was a courier company or a communication. Might have been a telecommunications company. I can't remember. And basically, it was a group of ranchers on their horses out in the outback, and they've got a heap of like thousands and thousands of cats they're trying to herd and get to a destination. And I was talking about that in the context of investigation. We've got so much information coming in from different people, and you're talking about talking to people that have been affected directly by the incident. They knew the person involved, for example, or they were involved in the incident themselves. You've got managers, supervisors, contractors, suppliers, there's all sorts. And it's really easy, I think, just to get distracted and lost, and suddenly you find yourself, this is coming in. Stop a minute. We talk a lot in our investigations about, what's contributing, what's non-contributing. It's non-contributing, let's dismiss it. You've got to be able to spend some time to work through that process. Just because you've been told this, is that in fact correct? Now let's go and validate that. Let's go to other interviews, for example, and let's go challenge. We believe there's an issue with this. Have you experienced it? And start to challenge that to validate what's being told.
Yeah.
And you've got to take that time to digest it. And like I said, if it's not relevant, push it aside. Likewise, we talk about our scope of investigations. Our investigation is scoped on that. We start to see stuff outside of that. We're not ignoring it. We may make reference to it, or we may raise concerns about it. But is that relevant to this particular incident? No, it's not. Let's put that aside. The incident is about that and keeping it, within scope.
Yeah. So in that industry, what I'm hearing is like clear leadership requires critical thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And often maybe it's not like SES where, you've got things unfolding right there and then, where someone's dying and literally, there's life in balance, but you've got lots of stuff happening and you need to be able to work through that. You need a process or multiple processes to work through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Any role. Any role at all. Look, even now, we've got multiple demands happening at the moment with system changes that are happening in the business. We've obviously got the impact of COVID, things like that. It's sit down, let's start listing things and let's start to work through what's the priorities. Again, you just find yourself, head explode.
Yeah, I almost see that as like the importance of like being mindful in how you approach your work, and not just mindful in terms of being aware of like, there's everything, but allowing yourself to take those pauses, like you said, take the breather as well, but to take those pauses and go, okay, what have we got here? Because when it becomes overwhelming, it makes, like, for anyone in any position, but particularly in the positions that you've been in, like, it would make it challenging to then follow through as effectively. I can
Absolutely.
imagine. Yeah.
Absolutely. Look, I find myself, you go, I've got my lists, happening of stuff and just cross them out. But, I look at those lists every day, right? What's priority today?
Yeah.
And I just have to do that. There's some stuff sitting on the list that's been there 3 months at the moment. It's a priority, but in the scheme of things right now, where the business is being impacted, with restrictions and lockdowns, it's nothing in the scheme of things. It has to be done, but it can wait. There's other stuff that's got to happen right here, right now, to ensure viability and profit and so forth for the business.
Yeah.
I think you've got to do that. I'm a big fan of whiteboards. Our office has got whiteboards everywhere, and like literally every desk has a whiteboard or pretty close to it. Start listing stuff. And I often just at random, I'll grab, like Danny's our CFO, I'll grab her and grab a whiteboard and said, right, let's just start working stuff out and start brainstorming stuff. And it's just seriously, I think she hates it some days. Like, I'll just get these brain farts, right? Let's go. We need to talk about this and start nutting it out.
Yeah.
Or we'll do it, both of us getting into the office early. I'm in the office at 6 in the morning. She gets in about 7. And so we've got a couple of hours before people are there. So then we'll start doing some of the really meaty stuff that is not necessarily for everyone's ears, but it's important stuff. And we just need that quiet time. No phones are ringing, just get into it. And then move on. I love my whiteboards.
Yeah, I work much the same way. I actually only did a video this week about like why you should create a to-do list, and not even from a productivity standpoint, but just from a stress management, and how it works with your brain to actually just write things down. But I have whiteboards. I'm a big fan of like for more creative stuff, or just to get brain dumping. I get butcher's paper. Just like write it all down, and just sort of that's the beginning of a creative process for me. So
I did a brainstorming workshop with our COO a few years ago. We locked ourselves in a motel function room. And by the end of 2 days, I think we nearly painted literally every wall with butcher's paper. I reckon there must have been 25 sheets of butcher's paper as we just worked through ideas. It started off initially with all the big picture stuff, and then we just started to break down each of those, whether it's pros, cons, what do we need to do, how are we going to do it, priorities, all that sort of stuff. And I've still got photos of it. I actually really enjoyed those sessions. They were good. They were fun. But to see
they're fun
walls of butcher's paper.
Yeah, they're fun, I feel like, because it taps into like that childhood feeling of like, oh, I'm just playing and creating for the sake of creating, which is where creation should really come from. So, Look,
I go back to that safety consulting business that Sam and I owned years ago. And we still speak fondly of this. It was such a learning curve. We locked ourselves in a motel room for 2 days. And literally reviewed the whole bit. We've been going a bit over 12 months at that stage. And the first day, we just reviewed the hell out of the business, butcher papered everything. And the energy just between the two of us particularly the first day, I think the second day was a bit waning on us by that stage. It was getting tiring, but we were literally jumping from paper to paper. Oh, we spoke about this. Oh, let's go look at this and write that over there. Oh, we got this. Yep, let's start writing about that. And again, by the end of it, we had reviewed that whole business. We decided to stop some services and some products and stuff like that. We were looking at new markets. We looked at, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. It is. It's good fun. I'm a big fan of visual management boards. I've said to people before, have a look at Lean Six Sigma principles, and visual management boards are really important. We do daily huddles within the office, at 10 o'clock every morning. We're now doing them online. With all the lockdowns, but we talk about, have some fun stuff. What's the word of the day, or a fun fact of the day? We'll then look at what have been the wins in the last 24 hours, what have been the losses in the last 24 hours, what are our opportunities for improvement that we've learned from those, and then we'll look at sales figures and other stuff that's important to us as a business. And I think they're huge. They're important to get that teamwork and that engagement, get people talking. Let's talk about the wins. Let's talk about the losses. Let's celebrate the wins. Let's celebrate the good work that people are doing. There's also I don't want to say darker side, but there's also a bit of a darker side to it, because there's actually a bit of public accountability. Oh, we haven't done this right. Why haven't we done this? What do we need to do to get this done? And it keeps people on track.
Yeah, I think that like having those things, it gets people engaged and involved, as you said, which helps them to take ownership. Like it's really hard to be in a position where you're trying to take ownership of it but some higher up is kind of keep sweeping that away or doesn't let you, but then you still have to be accountable for it.
For sure.
It's a weird balance. So
yeah, it is for sure.
That kind of actually helps because you're engaging people, and that's what
absolutely. Absolutely. Look, and like I said, when I came into the business, I'm not an investigator. I'm not an accountant. I've been brought in as a business manager, so it'd be folly of me to walk into the accounts department and start talking, all right, well, you're going to do this, this, and this, when I don't understand exactly what they do. Look, I know what accountants do, don't get me wrong, but I'm not an account person.
Yeah.
Tell me, what are the big rocks? What is it we need to focus on? What's causing you issues? What makes your day hard? What fix it? And even that took a while, coming into the business. Oh, no, look, we're not big on change. Here we are. It's a very different business now to what it was 4.5 years ago in terms of how we function. We still do the same job. It's just how we do it is different. We've automated a lot of our processes in the office now. We had systems there that we weren't using, and the systems that weren't doing what we needed, we got them changed. We either got rid of that system or we modified the system. We got programmers to come and help fix things for us to do what we want, to streamline it.
Oh, here's another self-reflective question for you.
Oh, these are hard.
Where do you feel like you get your communication or leadership really pretty well? Where do you feel like you do it pretty well?
I have been criticised over the years that I over communicate, and I find
that's a big tick. Yeah.
Sorry, you broke up then.
I'd say that's a big tick. Like that's a good thing.
I would agree with you. I'd like my staff to understand what's going on in the business, and as I said earlier, there is some stuff that they don't need to know about it because it's about them. Perhaps when we look at it might be restructures, might be looking at pays and other stuff like that.
Levels, yeah.
Correct. But I think it's really important. I think it's a part of that sense of belonging that people understand what's happening. If I talk about, even over the last couple of years now, when I've got pressure from the board telling me, these are priorities and what needs to do, well, guess what? That's going to flow down. If I'm stressed, you need to understand why I'm stressed, or, if I'm not focused on what you're talking about, this is why. And I think it's important that people know that. And I do it a lot, our whole team is remote. All my investigators around Australia, around the world, they don't come into the office in Melbourne, to have this communication. So we use online, collaboration, meetings and tools and stuff like that. And I share a lot of the wins in there. I've had great discussions today with this client. This is the potential coming out of it, because I think it's important people, again, feel that belonging and know what's going on. I think there's nothing worse than sitting in an organisation and suddenly there's a new process, system, or something big has happened. You suddenly go, where'd that come from?
Yeah, exactly.
I think I'm sure there is a thing about over communicating when you're over communicating the wrong stuff.
Yes. But
I think communication is great. Has to be. Likewise, emotions on sleeves. I've had a few managers over the years. You wear your emotions on your sleeve. You know what? You're right. I do.
Yeah.
Again, if I'm stressed, I want my staff to understand that I am stressed, but why and what we need to do to fix it.
Yeah.
There's reasons for that happening. And again, can be oversharing. You've got to be careful with that. Absolutely. But do I wear my emotions on my sleeve? Yeah, you bet I do. My staff know when I'm stressed. My staff know if I'm tired or if I'm emotional or something's happening outside of work. Again, that's part of belonging.
Yeah, and it shows that you're human, but it also gives permission to them to be human.
Are they?
And
I know. I thought they were robots.
But it gives them permission to share with you when stuff is going on for them as well, because they feel more theoretically, people will feel more comfortable when, if you were my boss, right, and I saw you and you had shared a couple of times when you've been stressed or you've just been tired, you're like, oh, my son was sick or whatever it is, right? It would then make me feel way more comfortable to come into work, and even if I'm showing up and it's all good, if I'm a bit tired, I could be like, oh, hey, Luke, I'm a bit tired. My kid was sick last night or whatever it is,
Yeah. So, right. I think it's important.
Yeah. It gives permission for those people that might feel like they need to hide things from their manager, things that don't need to be hidden, like being human. it gives them permission to show up and be like, oh yeah, this.
It was interesting. I worked for an organisation years ago, and I had a manager there. Geez, I learned a lot about leadership from him, what not to do and so forth.
Yeah.
I wrote a piece on social media many years ago, why you need to work for a bad boss. And I still push people to it to have a read. And I remember, we'd had our firstborn while I was working with him, and I was just talking in the group and got talking to him, and he stopped me and said, you know what, I don't care about this shit. He said, seriously, I don't care. He said, that's outside of work. I really don't care. I don't want to know about it. And you sort of think, that's hard. We got just desserts. It was probably about 5 or 6 years later. I'd left the organisation at that stage. I was there about 3 years, but it was I think it was about 5 years later. He had a child, and the child was incredibly unwell, and the amount of time he had to have off because of the unwell child, and from what I have heard, totally flipped his whole outlook. Suddenly it is an issue, and guess what? It does impact on work.
Yeah. Sometimes people just need the hard lessons to understand.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's likewise in the office. Things like work-life balance, that sort of stuff. I mentioned earlier, I get in at 6. I'm generally gone by 3 o'clock. My staff know that I'm leaving at 3 o'clock. And I want them to know that I'm leaving at 3 o'clock. They know that I'm on the phone, and they're always on the phone to me, and I encourage it. I drive an hour to and from the office and home each way. So I'm always there and available. I've got another staff member that starts at 8 o'clock. I've got another one that starts at 9 o'clock, and another one that starts at 10 o'clock, because that works for them. Yeah. And I think that's really important. I don't expect my staff to be robots. I don't expect them to be there, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day. Doesn't have to be. Get the job done. The 10 o'clock one just works for her. She does school drop-offs and stuff like that. I don't care. Yeah. Get the job done.
So refreshing. I love that.
Thanks. Thanks. Look, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm really open to that sort of stuff. I'm open to things to have conversations around flex time. I'm open to conversations about 4-day weeks, that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying we're going to implement that sort of stuff, but I'm open to let's explore this stuff.
Yeah.
Is there increased productivity with 4-day weeks? Absolutely there is. It's well researched, formally and informal research around that sort of stuff. Flex time. I've worked under flex time. God, it's the greatest thing ever. I love it. It works.
I feel like management and business is about because I'm in public my background's in public relations. So I feel like management and business isn't necessarily public relations or human resources, but it's like human relations. It's, it's this whole, how can we relate? How can we make this work so that it works for us as well?
Absolutely.
It's just,
Absolutely. Look, when I go back to that change stuff I spoke about earlier, when I was challenging the teams, about the big rocks and the challenges they've got their job, that was hard for them to get their head around, because they hadn't had that sort of engagement and hadn't seen the fruits of being able to actually make change.
Yeah.
It is hard even just to get that buy-in. I said it probably took me 6 to 12 months before I really started to make an impact with them and show them that we could actually change things and could make it better for them. At one stage, someone did challenge me and said, "Oh, you're looking to get rid of some of us." No, not at all. And we haven't. In fact, our head count has actually grown, not reduced. We're just looking to work smarter.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of those challenges. Let's make it easier to do your job and more enjoyable. Let's face it, no one wants to do a job that they hate.
No.
So
yeah, and I think that fear is because it's a survival fear of, when change happens at work, usually it comes with the restructure, and usually that restructure means redundancies or jobs not being there anymore. So it is
I've been on the end of those. I've had 2 redundancies.
Yeah. And change management comes down to communicating that exactly what you did. Be like, no, this isn't the plan at all. This is what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
Where do you feel like there is room for improvement in your leadership or communication?
Look, I think like everyone, difficult conversations are difficult. That's why they're called those. I can do them, but sometimes it takes a bit to work up to them, and Yeah, and probably also getting the right words, you know, to get the communication correct in those difficult conversations. Yeah, that can be a challenge. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I do them? Yeah, I can. And I've done lots, you know, from restructures, redundancies, terminations, performance management.
Yeah.
They're not pleasant,
Yeah,
but they have to be done.
Unpleasant, but I feel like that is one thing that is something for everyone, even no matter how experienced you are with challenging conversations. It's like, yeah, we can always just keep trying to do them a little bit better each time. Because,
you know, someone said to me a little while ago, oh, you know, you're a bit ruthless when it comes to this stuff. You know what? It's my job. You know, I've got to make decisions that impact on this business, you know, for the better. And not just this role, I mean, any role leadership role that I've been in. You know what? We've got a job to do, and our job is to do this and make it better and so forth. So coming with that is the discomfort of those conversations.
yeah.
You don't fit into this team. You're not part of this organisation. You know, you don't fit the values or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You know, there is a performance issue and so forth. Yeah.
I wonder if it's the truth, because I'm sure that can be delivered in a way that's still kind and compassionate, right? But what feels ruthless is like, oh, you're telling them the truth, like, or you're being so upfront with them, that kind of element.
Look, I remember the first time I was performance managed many years ago, and at the time, you know,
It's awful. Yeah.
I hated it. Fair dinkum. Hate my life. I hated it, and I had every bit of resentment. And you name a word that came out of my mouth, it was all negative. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah.
It took me a long time. Look, no, well, within the job itself, it probably took me a couple of months just to sort of properly digest that and understand that it actually was for the better. But it took me many years afterwards to really green frame that conversation and go, you know what, that was actually right what they said, and this is what I'd learned from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're tough. They're tough to be on the receiving end. But in hindsight, I see that it actually did make improvements, and it actually did have some positive results. So it just took me a while to get that right in my head.
Yeah. Well,
They don't hate me. They were actually trying to make it better.
yeah, you choose how you respond to it too. Like, even if it is like more malicious than helpful,
Yep.
You still get to choose how to respond to that. Like, you can be like, well, I'll show you, and then become a better version of you, or like, yeah, you get to choose the response.
Absolutely.
Ways.
Yeah. Absolutely. I just used it, but I use the terms red frame, green frame a lot with people. You know, you really do choose how you want to interpret that. You can red frame it and say, well, they hate me, they think I'm crap at my job, and, you know, he's a mongrel, and whatever other words you want to think of. Or and as I said, that one took me a few months to get right in my head, but then you look back and go, it was right. I wasn't performing, and this is what I need to do. And lo and behold, I'm doing it, and look at the results.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it's a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is, and it can be, and that's what makes it uncomfortable. And I think that's why people avoid it. But then what happens when we avoid
But I also think from an employee perspective, they don't understand how hard it is to have those conversations as a manager either.
Yeah.
Keepers, they're hard.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're tough. And like redundancies, you know, I've done redundancy before. I did 6 redundancies in a row a few years back now. And I was talking to from memory, a 17-year, 15-year, 13-year veteran in the business. You know, they've put 17 years of their life into that business, and suddenly they've got nothing. That's hard. That's hard. I don't have a role for you anymore. You know, this is what's happening in the business, and this is why, and so forth. And that 17-year one, you know, he was 60.
Yeah.
What's his chances of getting a job after it? Now he did. He did really well for himself, but it took a while. But yeah, that's tough. So there's both sides there. You know, it's tough to receive, but I'll give you the tip. It's just as tough to give too.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. Any last parting words of wisdom or advice, or what do you feel like is most important for people to leave understanding?
I think think that, look, there's probably a few things sitting there. You know, there's obviously that whole thing about buy-in and engagement and so forth. There's that whole conversation about difficult conversations. I think whatever you do and how you do it, you've got to, at the end of the day, it's still got to be done within the laws, whether it's fair work and things like that. You've still got to tread carefully, I guess, don't do the bull in the china shop. Don't rush into any conversation or any situation or any new role, whatever it may be. Take some time and understand the legacy and the issues and the hows and whys and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, anything you do has got to be still within, regulatory constraints and stuff like that. Again, I've done fair work, unfair dismissals and so forth, and I've survived those as a leader because of processes and due process that was followed and that sort of stuff. You can't be flippant about this stuff because there is still ramifications to what we're doing.
Yeah, don't be a cowboy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Luke. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of that wisdom.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.